So, hey guys, my name's Nishant, and this is another interview, and we have Chris Murphy here. Chris, if you want to maybe just introduce yourself a bit.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Chris Murphy, and I'm currently studying music at NYU's Clive Davis program, based out of New York, but grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, originally from England. And I've just been making some indie rock, indie pop, and general music for a long time, and I'm super excited to be interviewing him.
Awesome, yeah. So right now you're in Utah, right? Like what part of Utah are you in right now?
So I'm in Park City, Utah. Me and a couple friends who I make a lot of music with just drove across the country. We were doing the first half of the semester in New Hampshire, and then just did a road trip out to Utah, and have set up kind of like some home studios in both of those places, and just kind of been working on stuff in quarantine.
Have you like so you did you stop anywhere in between like New Hampshire and Utah, or you guys just like drove straight there and
Yeah, so it was a 4 day trip, but we like didn't really like stop anywhere for sightseeing or anything. It was mostly just like hotels and then getting on the road. But it was super cool. Like I've never been out to this part of the country before, like anywhere out west. So like the landscape is crazy, honestly.
yeah. And like they say like for artists like the atmosphere like makes a big difference in the creative process. So like do you see a change in like like how you're making music based on where you are, like, whether it's Charlottesville or New Hampshire or currently where you are right now?
Yeah, no, for sure. That was something I was definitely super excited about with this semester because I definitely feel like when I'm going to school in the city, there's a very specific vibe of my work. And I don't know, I always think it like reflects the city more, like it's a little bit darker, often a little bit more fast paced. So I was super excited to go up to New Hampshire. Like in the fall, it was just beautiful. We were up in the mountains there as well. And I definitely found myself writing different kinds of music there. Currently, like we just got out to Utah 2 weeks ago, I think. So I'm still kind of finding my flow here, which is a interesting process for sure. But I live with two other songwriters, and one of them produces for me a lot. So it's been really great to kind of like, as a group, figure out how the environment is affecting us, as opposed to just me individually as a songwriter.
Awesome. And are like the friends you're living with right now, are they from NYU as well, or
So I'm living the music out of the people I'm living with, the musicians I'm living with. I both know from high school. They're like my two best friends from high school. One of them does also attend Clive Davis. He's in the grade above me, and then the other one is not studying music, but is pursuing it to a degree. And we're just about to release an EP for him, his debut EP.
nice? So like the what's the music scene like in New York compared to, because I know you said you were working on music in Charlottesville. So like what's the difference in like the community there with music?
Yeah, so for a bit of context, after I graduated high school, I took a year out of school and just played with a band and recorded this album, Disconnect, that I've just put up on Cordio. And so after putting out the album, I just kind of toured around Charlottesville and some other places in Virginia, playing the live music scene there. And so I definitely like I feel a deep connection with the live music scene in Charlottesville. And it's always been such a music town. Like growing up, that's definitely a big reason of why me, Jack, and Jacob, the guys I'm living with, um, like do music and why we pursue it so heavily. So like I have such a love for Charlottesville music. That being said, obviously New York is a whole different beast. Like it's super exciting doing anything in New York. I've definitely had way more opportunities in Charlottesville, but
Yeah.
just little stuff I've done so far. Like I play with this band, Jay Solomon, who's also in Clive, and like we travel down to Philly all the time and are playing shows there. And just like the idea of traveling for music is something that's crazy. When you're up in the Northeast, that's suddenly possible. Like Charlottesville's 2 hours away from anywhere, so just having so many venues readily available is kind of crazy. And just the connections and like meeting people, it happens so much easier in New York than it does in Charlottesville.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And speaking of New York, I was checking out the Bake Sale Girl video, dude. It was so funny. Like, so you gotta provide some context to that scene where you're just like in the middle of Times Square, I think, and you're just wearing an apron. So was that your idea or like one of your
That was my
friends?
idea.
Yeah.
The crew felt terrible about it because it was like 20-degree weather and I was out there shivering for like 5 hours. But it was my idea, so they felt okay about it. But that's been like a total passion project of mine for a long time. I wrote that song back in 2017. put it out on the album, and then wanted to do like a new single version. And I'd had this music video idea in my head, but I personally like don't pursue film professionally. But then going to NYU all of a sudden, there were all of these people who like make good looking films. So I'd done a bunch of mock-ups of this video throughout high school with my friends, and they all just looked horrendous but had these like wacky ideas. So I met who's like this guy who's one of my best friends at NYU. I met with him and we like planned out the whole thing, and he's a really great director. And so we just kind of spitballed ideas back and forth and ended up with that wacky video. But the being naked almost in Times Square was my idea, but like bumping into the Elmo costume people was Yoni's idea, the director. He thought it'd be funny to like make me interact with those people. They were not pleased.
Damn, yeah. No, I really liked the video though. I liked it a lot. But so is this like a direction you think you're gonna want to take with like your other songs, like push out more like video content, or was this more like a like once in a like type thing?
For sure. So the next big project that I'm kind of gearing up for is it's still in the works, but I plan on doing this EP that's really more 2 songs each split into 2 songs. So it'll be 4 songs, but they're like 2 separate halves of an EP, and it'll be slightly more electronically focused. And that I want to do a short narrative film with. So the EP is probably going to be about 6 minutes in music length, and then the film would probably be about 8 minutes in total. So it would have like dialogue and acting and all of that, because I'm definitely super passionate about film and have grown into that, especially since coming to college. So I really want film to be a big part of all of my future projects, specifically with this next single / EP project.
Got you. And for the people like who don't know, could you explain like the difference between like an EP? Because honestly, I'm not too sure either. Like EP, LP, and album.
Sure. Yeah. So I just think of them in terms of length generally, and that's often like how I think the music industry has considered them. I think that this next project I'm doing is a bit fuzzy as to whether it's a single or EP, because I recorded these songs as single songs and was going to release them as singles, but now I'm splitting the actual audio files into smaller bits just because I want there to be more tracks. But yeah, generally a single is like 1 song, and then an EP would be like 4 to 6 tracks, and anything more is generally considered an album. But I've been finding a lot of freedom in making EPs recently, because they're kind of 4 to 5 song projects. So I can really choose a concept for 4 to 5 songs and like pursue that, as opposed to trying to do that for like 10 to 15 songs on a full album. So I personally, just where I'm at right now, really enjoy making EPs.
Nice. And so are you producing your own songs as well as like writing them, or do you have like are your friends like kind of doing like other parts of the music creating process?
Yeah, so after I've written tracks, I do all of the initial recording and production myself. Like I get all of the tracks down, and then I have a couple people that I generally go to do different parts of the process. So for final like mixing, I always get my friend Jacob, the other guy in Clive, um, to like do all of my final mixes and make sure everything's good, because he's just got really good ears about that. Um, but then like I also have a ton of instrumentalists that I call on later in the process. Like I have a violinist I always use, I have a saxophone player I always use. So it's definitely like I do the foundations, but there are like fundamental parts of the project I couldn't do without some collaborators.
That's fair. And I'm assuming like what would your like, favorite part of like the entire like if you had to pick one, like would it be songwriting? Would it be like, actually singing or
I really love when the songwriting starts to meet the production. Because I always feel like when I write songs, it's generally just me and a guitar or me and a piano or something like that.
yeah.
And so they're very much in that vein. But by the time they come out, they have like a full band or a full beat or track or like whatever it is for that song. And so like hearing it in my head with just a guitar and then getting to see that transform into like all these other elements that sometimes I'm contributing, but sometimes it's other people's total visions that like they get to put on the song. If I have like a featured instrumentalist or something, like that's kind of the most beautiful part of the process for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know I read this because I checked out your site, but could you speak upon like why you got started in music in the first place? I thought it was pretty like cool when I read it. I just wanted hopefully you can share it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I got started in music pretty young. I was initially forced into some piano lessons and then hated that, but eventually when I picked up the guitar, it was the first thing I was really ever like good at. It was like I was the only person at my small elementary school who did this thing. And so I'd always like, I'm from England initially and grew up in Virginia at this like really strict Catholic school, which both my parents worked at. I'm not religious at all. So like it really wasn't a great fit. And like, I just had always not felt a part of that community. And all of a sudden, when I started playing music, I was like wanted in that community. And so that was just like a super cool experience for me. And then from there on, I like the first couple of times I played live as just like a little kid were nothing like special as far as the performance, but were just cool situations. Like if you looked on my website, I think I talk about how I was on this like semester at sea in South America. And I just like happened to play this talent show as like a 12-year-old, and I was like the only kid on the boat. And so everyone was like super excited about it. And it was just like little things like that where I thought it was because I was like good or something, which is actually because I was a 12-year-old getting up on stage to play guitar. So it was like those like innocent childish feelings that I got from music. I feel like I still have today. And that's what keeps me excited about it. So it's like the passion that drove me to create music in the first place is still the same thing today, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I feel like a lot of people are they have like some sort of passion for music, but they might be risk averse, or they're I guess afraid to step into like these non-traditional paths of arts. And I think part of the reason why like I want to interview people is just because I want to show others that like you know getting into music can be really fun and can be really worth your time. And I guess like a question I really like to ask is like, what's like a piece of advice you would give to people deciding between like a traditional path and trying to explore their passions?
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Especially because like as a 20-year-old, like a lot of me and my friends are kind of still at that point where like you're in college, you can go back and do something else if you want to, but you're really like deciding what you're gonna want to do for your life. So I've had these conversations with a lot of my friends who are pursuing music as like a hobby right now. Um, and I don't know, I found my gap year to be the most useful thing to me for making that decision, because I decided before I go to college, before I choose what I want to do, like I really want to have like a taste of what living that life is like. And so in my head, I thought I knew I wanted to do music. And so I was like, well, what does it take to make a band? What does it take like to book shows? What does it take to record an album? And I ended up enjoying all of those processes. And I was like lucky enough that I could like live with my parents for that year and be in a town where there's a music scene. And like that all happened out well for me. But I would like definitely say to anyone who is trying to decide whether they want to pursue music or not, like definitely try it at least. I feel like especially if you're young, that you can have more chances. Like you can go back to school, you can like pursue a career anytime you want. But like if you really want to pursue music, like I think there's never a better time than now to do so.
Awesome, yeah. And you talked about like live performances you had during your gap year. So what was that like, especially like COVID? So obviously you haven't been performing live as much, I'm assuming. But could you speak on like, I guess, what were like the best and maybe hardest things about live performing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love live performing. Other than what I was saying about like the songwriting meeting, the producing, that might be my favorite part of the process. I really love connecting with like crowds and just getting to play like my guitar live and stuff is super fun. I would definitely say it's an incredibly stressful experience, and I was doing stuff on really low stakes as well. Just like if you're leading a band, trying to like manage people is like a process, like making sure everyone gets to rehearsal on time but is also still happy, and making sure like everyone gets the right like cut, like when you get paid, and just like making sure you're like being ethical and fair to everyone, I think is like a super like important part of the process, but also takes way more work than I think a lot of people starting bands think about. Because I definitely went into it thinking like, oh my god, this is great, I have all these friends who are musicians, now we can just think about the music. And like the music is not the only thing you think about when you have to work with a band. And so, but that being said, that's also what makes it so rewarding, is then like if you do have a series of like good practices and you book the right show and you play a good show, that feeling afterwards, the whole band, if you've been like doing it the right way, the whole band will feel amazing about that show. And that's always something that's like stood out to me, is like when you play a live show with people, there's that connection on stage that even though you're not like directly talking, you're all having the same experience. And it's hard to explain, but it's like you don't have that, it's hard to find that connected experience outside of playing live, at least in my experience.
And you talked about like booking the right show. Like, I'm just kind of curious, like, what does it mean to book the wrong show, or like, what goes into like accepting or rejecting like a venue to play at?
Yeah, so at the stage I'm at right now, I definitely accept way more things than I reject, and I'm still at the stage where I have to reach out to venues all the time and be like, can I play here?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, when I said the right show, I definitely mean more on the side of when you reach out and you find a venue, because like you could book a 200 person venue or a 50-person venue, and maybe that 200-person venue is something like you really want to play, but like you can fill the 50-person venue. It can be like people that are really interested in your music, and maybe like you've gone to shows there or grown up going to shows there and like really love the vibe. And so like I've definitely found like, with whether it's with my band or like if I've played in other people's bands, like playing in your capacity is like super important for the live experience. Like there's no reason to pretend to yourself and like lie to the venue that you're going to book a bigger show than you are. Like it's not about those numbers. It's about like creating a good show and a good experience. So like I definitely think you have to value that over like selling out a big place.
got it. And like what? So in terms of like, I guess numbers or maybe not even, but what metrics do you personally use to like to gauge your own success, like in the near future, like in the next month or 2 months or year, like what do you like? What are your short term goals, pretty much? That's my question.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's definitely something I think about a lot, and especially like attending music school and like me, it's kind of like music business school. They have us thinking about our careers as well as just like the music itself. So I'm definitely thinking about that a lot. I would say I'm still focused on the content and like some small quantifiable goals. So like I have projects specifically I want to get out. I recorded these live sessions last January that came with like that are coming out with some videos. And so like that's something I've on the back burner that I'll feel accomplished if I get that done. I have these two single or EP projects that I'm working on. Like I'll feel accomplished if I get that done, and that kind of keeps my like spark going. But as far as actually like moving my career forward, I'm always just looking to get like a little bit more on the next release than I did on the last one. And that's really all I can hope for, because I just want to be moving in a forward trajectory. It's like I'm not saying I want to play stadiums in the next 5 years. That could be really cool, but but I think realistically, like as long as the venue I play next year is bigger than the venue I'm playing this year, that's kind of what matters to me as far as benchmarks.
Yeah. And so how much time does out of like your work as an artist like goes into making music versus the marketing and the publicizing and reaching out to people and stuff, so like could you speak on like what that process has been like?
Yeah, it's interesting, honestly, because like before I came to college, I think when I was doing music of any kind, it was always on the creative side. I was writing or creating or practicing or something like that. And then when I came to college, I started taking all of these like branding classes and business classes, and realized that in order to like make any money in this, just like to survive, I definitely have to think about the other side as well. So now I think when I sit down to like do music, sometimes that definitely includes spending like 5 hours on my website and like editing that to make sure it's like representing what I'm doing. Because if I'm making all this music that I think is cool, but I'm not working on actually getting it out to people, then like I don't know what the use of it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would definitely say that it's been a real luxury, honestly, with Corona, that there are no live shows, because I've for the first time in like the last year or so, I've really had time to just work on like the internal stuff. And yeah, I'm working on some branding and imaging stuff, but it's mostly like I can sit back in my house and actually like record a piece of music, and I'm not thinking about booking live shows because they're not happening. So this has actually been like a really cool time, especially now that I can live with some other musicians, to kind of go back to that high school version of myself. And really, when I'm doing music, it means I'm playing instruments and I'm writing songs, and that's definitely been like great for like happiness and productivity.
Okay, so you said that you basically have been working on your site a lot more and just working on like your voice and like your I guess yeah your songs versus we're working on booking shows and stuff. And okay, cool. So do you try to reach out to playlisters, that type of deal, or is that part of your process as well? Or
Yeah, so it's about to become part of my process for sure. So with Disconnect, it wasn't. I again like really wasn't business savvy when I put that out at all. Um, and kind of just released that as a local release. I like tried that was really I was trying to sell more CDs of that in my town, and like physical copies, and was doing the very much like indie DIY thing. But now that like everything is more remote and I'm trying to have more streams and that type of content, on these next releases I'm going to be doing, I'm definitely going to be reaching out to playlisters and publishers and things like that. And so what I'm doing and what you might have seen on Quaudio is that I'm posting all of the demos from Disconnect just to get like an online presence back. So I'm posting them on SoundCloud and on Quaudio. And then once I've released, I think like 12 of those, that's when I'm going to start releasing the new music, and that's when I'm kind of going to go more for playlisters. Because right now I'm still pretty happy releasing stuff like fully like underground and doing like the manual work of getting people to listen. And I think with these next releases though, they're going to be a lot more polished. There's not going to be like any demo aspects to them. Like
Yeah.
they're definitely more playlist ready.
So were you like surprised when so for those of you who don't know, I basically was on Quaudio just like looking through people's music, and I came across like Chris Murphy, and I really liked a lot of the songs on Disconnect. And also after more like listening, my favorite song personally is She Said. I know it's like I think your first song, but
Yeah, one of my
that's
first.
my jam.
I saw the streams went up for that the like yesterday. I was like, who is listening to She Said?
Wait, that was me. Also, I binge songs. Like if I like a song, I'll just listen to it all day. So that was me like the past couple of days.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask. So yeah, were you surprised like when I reached out to you on Quaudio and just like was like, who is this guy? Like why I didn't know people really talk on Quaudio.
Yeah, honestly, I thought Quaudio was super cool when I heard about it getting started, and they were reaching out to like music students in New York, and I'm sure across like the country, about like using the beta and stuff like that, and it seemed like a really cool idea. And then I just hadn't been that active on it, and then literally on the day that I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and be more active on Quaudio, I'm gonna put some stuff up there and see if anything happens. Like you immediately messaged, and I was like, wow, that's crazy, way to go, Quaudio. So yeah, I was pretty floored, but also like was hopeful because I hadn't done anything on Quaudio yet, so it was cool.
Yeah, I guess that was just like luck or a chance or whatever. Because that was like I think the second day I was just like looking into artists and stuff. So yeah, yeah, it's chance. And interesting. So aside from Quaudio and like all these like companies and products that are there for like musicians and upcoming musicians, what's like I guess my question would be like what's like the biggest issue you have with like the industry or something that you think needs to be solved in like helping upcoming artists.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things, like especially recently now that I'm living with musicians, it seems to be what we talk about all the time. Like, are the issues with the record industry? I think like Spotify comes up a lot. I personally like hate Spotify. I like I don't pay for premium. Like I like get my music off YouTube and illegally, which sucks because like I want to pay musicians and I do when I can, but like I know that Spotify isn't paying them, and so that's definitely something I think streaming royalties, with Apple Music and Spotify in particular. Tidal's not too terrible about it, but I definitely think artists need to be paid way more for streaming, and that's kind of like a personal pet peeve, I guess, and like a big issue. But I also think like for music in general, it really sucks how like playlistable everything is now, and how like things need to be successful on TikTok often in order to get radio play. Like that's kind of a weird gatekeeper. There's always been music journalism like Rolling Stone, like publications like Fader and Pitchfork, like that normally like give the go ahead on songs, and you're like reading like thoughtful reviews on them. And now it's like if it has a 20-second clip on TikTok, that's how you get radio play for like a 4-minute product. Like it feels like a weird preview to me. Like there's definitely something strange about that, that makes me uncomfortable. So like Spotify, I'm like, fuck you, Spotify, that sucks. But TikTok, it's more like I'm just not sure what's going on there. But like that's how music is, and it's probably not inherently bad. I'm just like I enjoy albums and like longer listening because I like make music myself, so I know I have that like pretentious outlook on it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, those are definitely two things that trouble me about the music industry.
Yeah, so I've actually talked about this with like a lot of people actually, and I think of the people I've talked to, most of them have decided to kind of join the new like wave, I guess, like of like creating a TikTok, like, and a lot of them do like music reviews or just like sing like parts of songs, but basically they're trying to grow their influence on TikTok. Is this something that you've considered as well, or?
Yeah, a lot of my friends at school do stuff like that, and I have so much respect for it. And honestly, some of my friends do it in ways that I'm just like, that's just like genius. I don't know how you just got a million views off of that. Like, that's crazy. I
Yeah,
just think it's, for me personally, like, I'm really not trying to get Billboard top tens. I'm trying to like sell out shows, I think would be the goal, because that's kind of the two ways you can make money doing music today. You can either be a really successful live act, or you can like have chartable and playlistable radio hits. And I think just for like my skill set, especially because I'm just like, I'm not technology savvy at all. Like, I don't go on my phone really ever. Like, it would be such a big brand change even to think of it in like business senses for me to
yeah,
start doing stuff on my phone like that. That I don't really entertain it. But I definitely like some aspects of it. Like, I love the little covers. I always thought that was something that was super cool about like YouTube, and I totally enjoy doing covers and would like put stuff up on YouTube, because that's how I find like most of the music I listen to is by looking through like small accounts on YouTube. So I like the idea of people putting out all of this kind of rough content. It's just not, that's definitely not the medium for me.
got you. And so this kind of relates to a question I like to ask a lot of people. It's would you rather, and I think I know the answer, but I'm just gonna ask it either way. Would you rather have like a million streams on like a song on Spotify, or have like 100 or like 100-person concert or 100-person live show? If you had to pick one or the other.
Yeah, I think like in today's market, hopefully both are possible in some way. But obviously, yeah, I prefer the live show, like given the rest of the stuff I've said today.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I just think like there's part of the reason I love music is there's a real magic to some aspect of it. And like I don't know, I think I'm a pretty like cynical guy. As I said, I went to Catholic school but was an atheist, so like there are certain like connotations there. Um, and so I think there's like a certain magic to music that I haven't managed to like bat away. And like the concept of preferring a million streams over like an actual experience, like that just seems kind of absurd to me from like a musical perspective.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. And hopefully, like the 100 people who will listen to you become like your super fans who go around being like, "Yo, Chris Murphy's the best," and like, because
Right.
honestly, that
Few people think I'm the best, and like a lot of people kind of like me, you know?
yeah, yeah. And so your upcoming EP, I want to say Tunnel Vision, right? You talk about how like you're using like you use the instruments that you first like started music with. So like what going back to your roots, I guess, like what does that mean to you working on this upcoming project?
Yeah, for sure. It's been driving my friends crazy because the instruments are objectively kind of shitty, and I love playing them, but like it took up a bunch of car space to drive them out to Utah, and like they hate playing them. So,
Yeah.
but over quarantine, I don't know, I was in kind of a dark place. I think a lot of people were, and I had some of my music equipment, but a lot of it was stuck at school because I went on spring break and then wasn't able um, to go back to school, and so I didn't have a lot of my musical equipment, and I had like the first guitar I'd ever bought. It was like this really bad like classical guitar that doesn't stay in tune above the fifth fret. So like all the songs on the EP I'm playing below the fifth fret. And then like I had a really shitty practice drum kit, and no way to properly mic it, so I had to record all the drums like individually, which just like isn't an easy flow. And then I had like this bad like Yamaha practice keyboard. And so but it ended up being really cool because um, I had all of these limitations. It was like I'd set a bunch of rules for myself without even saying anything, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so that was super cool. And I ended up experimenting way more in other ways to kind of like compensate for the fact that I couldn't do what I was comfortable with. Um, and that just created this whole like unified sound on this EP that I don't think is on Disconnect. Like I really enjoy Disconnect, and I think it's good in a lot of ways, but I think that like it's not a concept at all. They're all like, most of the songs are about the same person. It was like about one relationship, but like that's kind of the whole concept of the album. Sonically, they're not that similar. Whereas like this one, they're all very distinct songs, but there is like a cohesive sound to the EP. And so I kind of registered that sound as like nostalgic and as reminding me of my roots, because I used all of those instruments that I was talking about that I like learned to play on. I think my parents were probably like mildly displeased that over the years they'd like helped me buy all of these nicer instruments, and then I went and used all the shitty ones they bought for me when I was like 10.
Yeah.
But I think the EP sounds good, so hopefully it pays off.
Yeah. So it's nice that you mentioned like your parents. Like, I was wondering like what has the support been like from friends, family, and like I guess like are there things that you're grateful for towards your current success and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like friends, family, and honestly, like Charlottesville as like a community have been by far like the biggest helps in any like jumps forward I've had so far. It was super awesome when or the context wasn't awesome, but when I like was graduating high school, I didn't get into Clive Davis the first time I got waitlisted, and so I didn't really want to go to any other schools. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to like go to college, and my parents like convinced me to just take a gap year because I was planning on just like not going. And they were like, if you take a gap year and you pursue music and you do all of this stuff, like we'll like help you, and then you can apply to NYU, and if that's what you want, like you can go and all of that. And so it was like a big change where in high school they were always kind of hoping I think I didn't pursue music in college. But when they saw that it was like something I was really serious about and I like proved it to them over my
Yeah.
gap year by playing all these shows, they just like totally respected that and have like been so helpful since then and so supportive. So I really appreciate that from them. My friends have always been so supportive. I used to have less live shows around like town, but I'd run an open mic in high school. That happened like a bunch of times during the year, and all of my friends were always so supportive about that. That's always where I played and released my new music.
Yeah.
So it's just like little things like that. They always post when I like release new music and just little stuff like that for sure. But then I'd also say the Charlottesville music community is what put all of this like over the edge. I definitely wouldn't have managed to release my album or play any shows without the people in that community. There are some great local bands there, like a Kendall Street Company and Orion and the Melted Crayons. I would definitely check both of those out. They're two like great live bands who just like are so supportive, will like let me play like with people from their band sometimes, and just like have helped me on my recorded stuff, and just like really taught me from like their older perspective like how to be successful and how to be happy in this. And I think like that is just invaluable, like especially for my mental health. When I went to New York, like the music industry I feel there is so much more like toxic and fast paced, and like just having this grounding of being like there are all these people back in Charlottesville who love making music and do it for the joy and make money and make a living. Like I know this is possible. Like I don't need to get in my head about the New York stuff. So like friends, family, home, all of that is absolutely fundamental to everything I do.
That's awesome. And so are you so I guess like in terms of like looking for collaborators or people to like you may want to make music with, are those people probably going to be from Charlottesville, or do you have people in mind from New York, or do you just plan on continuing to do what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I use definitely a combination of collaborators from Charlottesville and New York. And weirdly enough, Philadelphia, I just like randomly met a bunch of people from Philadelphia going to school in New York. So those are kind of the three main cities. But like, yeah, the violinist I always use is one of my closest friends in Charlottesville. But the saxophonist is like this new friend that I recently met at NYU. And then I have a whole like cast of drummers I use because drummers are always hard to keep. And then I generally just get like any one of my friends to play bass. So it's like I definitely think about like the community and family of the band even before like the instrumentalists like itself. And so I definitely draw from New York and Charlottesville a lot, but I love working with other people, and I love like trying to create a community there. So I don't think it's as much location based, but I definitely try and make sure that it's like my friends in the band.
Got you. And I guess we can end this with one final question, which is, where do you see yourself in like a year or 2 years?
Yeah, no, that's a really big question. I think Corona is going to dictate a lot of that. But I really hope to see myself like on tour. That's what I've been thinking about a lot, especially since live shows are like really restricted right now. I kind of like remember how much I enjoy playing them. And so if I would say like in 2 years time, I would love to be on tour in some capacity, whether that's for my band or like I'm playing guitar in someone else's. I definitely just want to get back to playing live shows. I think that like realistically, as far as releasing music, I would plan to be like in the works on my first like real studio album in the next like couple years. I want to keep releasing singles and EPs for the time being, and focus on that, like building that live kind of connection. But like I'd really like to start working on a studio album in the next couple years. So those are kind of like big goals. But again, none of that is like money or like label based or anything like that. It's more there are just certain projects I want to be working on over the next couple years.